Welcome to the How to Be Moderately Successful podcast. I'm your host, Mike Scott, and I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Nona Digital. This podcast is all about helping you to build better businesses, better fintech products, and a better version of yourself. We get a lot of messages to thank us and our guests for the content that we put out, which I can only assume means that you're getting value from the podcast. But if you'd like to support us, then please do give us a rating and a review. You'll be surprised at how much each one helps us. We set up a link to make this easier because it's actually not that easy to give a review. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/how to be moderately successful. We'll drop this in the show notes too, and thank you in advance. Today's episode is sponsored by ourselves, Nona Digital. Building a fintech business is difficult, and building the software that enables that business, that scales, and that your users love is very difficult. In today's hyper-competitive environment, getting your software built right really does matter. But you've also got to focus on building your business, your team, closing your next deal, and making the impact that you need to make, and this is where we help. With an excellent track record of delivering scalable, intuitive software for fintech companies around the world, we'll take away just some of your stress by making sure that your product is designed and built at the highest standards by people that really do care. We're small enough so that you're always close to the principles, but big enough to be able to deliver consistently with no key person dependency. We've got deep expertise in fintech and particularly in blockchain application development. And we've also got a proven track record of expanding and evaluating internal tech teams and capabilities for our partners. So if you'd like to accelerate your fintech project with a team of experts, we'd love to hear from you. Head over to www.nona.digital to book a call directly with one of the principals or follow any of the contacts in the show notes. I have to plug, we are actively hiring senior developers and technical leads and are offering a very decent bounty for any referrals. So if you know of any senior devs, because they're very elusive, please do make a referral, and there could be something tasty in it for you. And now, onto the show. Today, my guest is Riccardo Spagni, who is also, and possibly even better known as Fluffy Pony. Rick is, I think, most widely known through his role as the lead maintainer of Monero, a privacy-centric cryptocurrency project that aims to obfuscate the linkability of transactions across source, quantity, and destination. But his career spans a lot further than just Monero. In 2016, he launched Globee, a multi-currency payment processor. And later on, Rick also founded Tari, whose mission is to be the most useful, decentralized platform that empowers anyone to create digitally scarce things that people love. And now, Rick's most recent project is y.at, or y.at, which is a really interesting project. It's a censorship-resistant emoji-based online identity platform. This project hasn't officially launched yet, but you can join the waitlist at y.at. I already have, and I'm looking forward to the launch. What struck me about Rick is that from the first time I spoke to him a couple of years back was just how open he was to meeting with people like me. He's one of the biggest names in crypto, and yet still has time for a lot of people, which really speaks to his character. Welcome, Rick. It's great to have you on the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, no worries. So, look, I mean, you're best known, I think, for your contribution to and leadership of the Monero project. So maybe let's just start there. What is Monero, and how did you get there? How did you get to become the lead contributor to such a massive project?
Sure. So, Monero is a privacy-focused or privacy-enhancing digital currency. So it shares a lot of attributes with Bitcoin, but it does some things differently, which its primary purpose is to improve, obviously, on the privacy side. It does other things too. I mean, there's some different approaches that it takes on the scaling side and so on. But really, the primary, what I would say, differentiator between Monero and Bitcoin is on the privacy side. It's also not based on Bitcoin's code, so it's a totally separate code base, which presents its own challenges, but also its own benefits because no decision is made. You get to make all the decisions from scratch. In terms of how I got involved, I got involved like right at the beginning when Monero launched. I was an early miner, an early developer, an early contributor, like at launch time, and we ended up, myself and 6 others, ended up forking the project away from the guy that launched it for a number of reasons. It just didn't work out. and I sort of became the de facto lead maintainer because nobody else wanted to.
And that worked out all right for you.
It worked out all right.
So that's kind of interesting. Like, because nobody else wanted to, do you think that? So, like, fast forward to today. I mean, I know it's kind of weird to say this, but like, had you repeated that now today with the communities that exist, do you think that would have even happened? Like, nobody else wanted to? Because now it seems like there's just an endless sort of interest in the space.
I think if Monero had to launch today under the same set of assumptions and circumstances, I don't think no one would want to. But I think that there's a difference between desiring to be involved and actually having that intersection of obviously there's some skill involved. You have to be able to review code. You have to be able to what we call herding cats, which is basically dealing with like moving things around and getting people to do their thing, because it's an open source project. No one's getting paid. So, you end up having to herd cats a lot. You have to take a lot of abuse. People think that you're an employee, even though what you're doing in your own free time and of your own volition. And I think that having all of those qualities and attributes, a lot of people want to be helpful, but they just don't have the combination of things. So, if you take Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin's lead maintainer is a guy called Vladimir van der Laan. And he's a lot less vocal than I was, or than I am. But he's had to take the same amount of abuse, if not more, and had to deal with the same amount of herding cats, and had to deal with the same amount of criticism and very little celebration of wins. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Bitcoin or Monero or other major open source projects. The experience as a lead maintainer, excuse me. The experience as a lead maintainer is typically a thankless one, and so you really have to want it to do it.
So you mentioned something which I actually didn't realize. You said you don't get paid for it. Now, I mean, I'm very aware that you don't get a salary or dividends or what have you, because this is not a business, right? But surely there is some kind of reward, at least in the token, for being involved at that level, or not?
With Monero and Bitcoin, no. There's none of that. I mean, there certainly are many digital currencies that have a team allocation, but they're typically so an important distinction to make is when we talk about open source, we don't mean the source code is available online. That we typically say is source available. So, I'll give you an example of that. Microsoft released the .NET 1.0 source code. You can go download it. Does that mean that .NET is open source? No, it doesn't. And you are not contributing to .NET Core unless you work at Microsoft. Okay, in fairness, Microsoft has become a little bit more open recently. But still, it's maintained by Microsoft. It's built by Microsoft. If you want to go and contribute to the open source version of it, you go contribute to Symbian. You don't contribute to Microsoft. So that's source available. Now, open source is totally different. Open source is like Linux. It's like Apache. It's like Bitcoin. It's like Monero. There might be companies supporting it, but the way the companies support it is either by contributing directly to developers, or alternatively, and this is more common in what, like enterprise open source, is they will hire a bunch of developers who will then contribute to the software. They will actually write code because as a company, you're using that software. Maybe you're using Linux and there's a particular driver that you need in your environment. So you might hire someone, he'll write the driver, it gets submitted to the kernel repository, it becomes part of the Linux kernel, and you use it obviously, in your environment, and so now everyone wins. And that's typically what we refer to when we say open source. Now, Bitcoin, Monero, and some other projects in this ecosystem are open source, and that means anyone can pitch up, anyone can work on it. There are some companies that hire people and then get them to work on the software for reasons of their, of their own need, or, out of whatever, like they think it's a good idea out of charity, effectively. And there are, of course, some people who might go and like raise money through crowd funds. There are some developers who are supported by donations and Patreons and that sort of thing. But that's kind of like, that's the reward that you get. There's no additional reward. There's no token kickback. There's no bonuses if, like performance-based bonuses. There's none of that.
That's actually, so firstly, thank you for that distinction, because look, I mean, I run a development business, but I'm not a developer. That's actually a distinction I didn't realize before. So thank you for clarifying. That was really useful to me. Secondly, and fully respect if you don't even want to answer this question, but I'd always assumed, I mean, look, you're sort of on a couple of unofficial crypto rich lists. Like if you Google these things, often your name will be like, we don't actually know what Fluffy's worth, but it's a lot. And why I'm bringing this up is not because I want to talk to you about what your net worth is. It's none of my business. But I am suddenly now curious. I just always had this assumption that because you were such a massive contributor, you were being rewarded, and at such an early stage that just went to crazy multiples. That not being the case, how have you amassed significant crypto wealth, as a general question? And I would totally respect if you don't want to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, I did not make a bunch of money from Monero. In fact, I mined a lot of Monero early on, but ended up having to spend that like on hosting and all sorts of other things. So it's like, I mean, I've done okay for myself. I'm certainly not going to pretend otherwise. But I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I mean, my wife and I started our first business in like 2009. I discovered Bitcoin in May 2011, and I did not go and buy a bunch that I'm still sitting on today. Like, those are the early days when we had no idea, if it was going to be successful or not. And my earliest interactions with Bitcoin were, this is nonsense. It's not going to work. I'm going to set about proving that it's nonsense. So, that's, but of course, being exposed to that early on has its benefits. Like, I bought Casasius coins in 2011 and 2013. I've certainly benefited from Bitcoin's existence, but most of the money that I've made has just been from very, very traditional things. My wife and I started an import-export business. We spun up a bunch of e-commerce sites to be able to sell our stuff. We also sold to retailers. And at one point we were the largest e-commerce retailer for nail and beauty products in South Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, really. So, we did extremely well through that. Obviously now, 10 years later, pretty much everything I do has got a crypto bent, and I'm not really doing more traditional things. But I do have traditional businesses that I still own and invest in. We for the longest time had a string of holiday rental properties, and we actually, just before COVID, we sold a bunch of them. Thank goodness, because otherwise we would have been pretty hammered by that.
Yeah.
I've been involved in the vehicle market as well. This is something else I don't really talk about, but like, I own a car dealership.
I did not know that.
I know most people don't. It's not something I really talk about, but I own it's started off as a car storage facility, and then we branched into sales in Johannesburg, and that's done. I mean, that survived through COVID, and that's done particularly well for itself. So I have a fair number of more traditional business leanings that I've been involved in, and that I've businesses that I've started. Businesses I've invested in, and that have nothing to do with crypto, and that I've done well through.
It's interesting, Rick. And thanks for that share. I appreciate it, because I realize it's a pretty direct question. But it's always good to hear that from, like, quote unquote super successful crypto people. That almost every time I've spoken to really seriously big names in crypto, there's usually that kind of a story, like, hey, Mike, yeah, sure, I've done well in crypto, but actually I'm a pretty sophisticated and experienced entrepreneur or business person. That it's very seldom that people go full into crypto before they've actually established themselves as a business person. So it's kind of good validation on that. Didn't want to ask you this, but I can't let it go. You almost said under your breath there, like you set out to prove that Bitcoin is bullshit. Have you done that?
So I spent a lot of time early on, especially I would say probably about 6 months in early 2011, trying to prove that Bitcoin's consensus mechanism wouldn't work. I felt that it was great in theory, but it wouldn't hold up in practice. That with the right amount of Sybil nodes and with the right amount of pressure, that I could somehow manipulate consensus. And I did actually try. I mean, I really did. I made a concerted effort, not disruptive to the network, but running my own experiments around like node isolation and trying to break peer discovery, which was a lot less robust then than it is now. And yeah, I learned a lot of lessons. In fact, initially, I totally missed the point of the blockchain's role in the consensus mechanism. And I sort of thought to myself, well, if I can just isolate a node, I can feed it fake blocks. And that, totally missed the point of proof of work in that whole mechanism. It was 2011, there was no amount of reading that I could have done on Bitcoin Talk that would have really taught me anything. Like, I had to experience it. I had to experiment.
I love that. So what's your, look, the audience of this podcast is not super technical, so most of what you said there would have been lost on them. So explaining to a 7-year-old, what is your current view of Bitcoin? And I'm not asking you to predict the price. I'm asking as a thing, how do you think of Bitcoin today? Is it a store of value? Is it a cool technology?
Yeah.
Is it both? Is it neither? Like, how do you think of Bitcoin as explained to not a 7-year-old, but a non-technical business person?
Yeah, sure. So Bitcoin is incredible because of how robust it is. And this is, of course, very important because if you think about it, I think maybe a good analogy is like a safe at a bank. Inside the safe of the bank, you've got, and I mean, obviously, depending on where you live, this may or may not be the case, but if you think about it from movies, you've got all of these like safety deposit boxes that are owned by people. And they're inside a vault, and there's normally this gigantic vault door, and they do like the big twirly thing on the outside to get into it. And if you take a step back behind that vault is in like a secure area in the bank that's protected by these big sliding, like grated gates, and you got to swipe in, and even behind that you get into the main bank, and there's a security guard that's armed with a gun. And if you get behind that, now you're in the street, and even getting into the bank building might be challenging because there's bulletproof doors and they close and all that sort of thing. So there's like layers of protection. Now I would consider putting my my money in a safety deposit box at the bank, relatively secure, because it's pretty robust, right? There's layers of security. So Bitcoin is very similar to that, in that there's all of this robustness that's built into the protocol that has it's sort of developed over time. So obviously Satoshi's brilliance was in providing this amazing foundation, but it's kind of like the bank vault, right? It's there, and if it existed today, given how adversarial the environment is, it would have been blown open. Like someone would figure it out. But now, over time, what has happened is the Bitcoin core developers have obviously improved things. They've made it more robust. They've added all those layers. And it being in an adversarial environment, there are people who've poked at it. I've poked at it. And so, it's necessitated improving it. And people have found bugs and they've reported them. And people have found bugs and try to exploit them. And through all of this, and sometimes successfully exploited them. And through all of this, Bitcoin has just become more robust, where it's all these layers of security, experience, all of that have built on top of it. Now, how is that different from a cryptocurrency launched today? Well, a cryptocurrency launched today might have really excellent design. So instead of like a bank vault with a big swirly thing, it's a bank vault with like a digital keypad and the most modern digital lock. And that's great because the digital lock can't be hacked, and all sorts of, you can justify it, and you can have a white paper and a yellow paper and an orange paper, and you can have the best crypto minds in the business. You can have all of the VC backing, all of the justification. But the unfortunate reality, and I say this to someone who's working on a crypto project that's going to suffer from the same issue, as a newly launched crypto project, you are at square zero. you are just the bank vault. You are one layer between you and the person's money. And someone can come and put TNT outside and then, unroll the thing, and they've got the little cartoon thing, and they blow up the vault door, and you're sitting there going, we didn't expect them to get that close, So it's very challenging, and it takes time to build up those layers. And that's the thing that Bitcoin has that nothing else has, is the benefit of time. Monero does not have the benefit of 12 years of history. Ethereum does not have the benefit of 12 years of history. Nothing has that benefit except Bitcoin. And that's why Bitcoin's role as a secure store of value is inevitable. It might fail in all sorts of other things. It might fail to deliver on the privacy side. It might fail to deliver on the medium of exchange side. I mean, I don't believe that it'll fail to deliver on that, but, sure, I'm willing to accept that those are risks involved with using Bitcoin today. However, as a secure store of value, nothing else comes close.
I've heard countless explanations and justifications, but I've never heard that. And that was actually super useful, Rick. Thanks for that, because I think I don't find what you just said sensationalist or maximalist or anything. It's just pretty logical, and I've just never thought of it like that. So, the whole debate of, I guess, to the traditional finance mind around the volatility is a separate thing. But the way you described its value being in its robustness simply because it's existed for 12 years, very, very interesting and useful. So I want to move on to y.at. So as I said in the intro, when you and I spoke in the pre-interview, it was very much on the DL. It's now seemingly public in the sense that you're talking about it on your Twitter, but it hasn't launched yet. So I gave a one-liner intro, which I'm not sure is even accurate. So tell us about y.at, what it is, why you think it needs to exist.
Sure. So, y.at has launched in alpha. There is a waitlist. If you get onto the Discord, you can skip the waitlist, and you can get yourself a y.at or more than one y.at, whatever tickles your fancy. So one of the sort of key things, and I can talk about y.at for hours, and it's I don't want to turn this into a y.at podcast, but one of the key things is we're building Tari, and Tari is this merge mine sidechain for Monero. It's a decentralized assets protocol. So it's it exists not to replace Monero, not to threaten Monero. Obviously, it relies very heavily on Monero's security model. It exists to augment Monero and to also be its own thing to some degree. I'm not going to pretend that it can't stand on its own, but it exists partially to benefit Monero and partially to benefit from Monero. So it's got this, I think a lovely relationship with Monero, and it does have a very big privacy focus. Now, you're building this decentralized assets protocol, and one of the things that really, really is key is if you're building anything from a software perspective, like we can all come up with wonderful ideas. We can come up with very clever ideas. But if you build it, that does not mean that anyone is going to use it. So a key element to building Tari has been our desire to build a reference application, something that people will actually use. So when we started, we actually created a ticketing business called Big Neon. And Big Neon was amazingly well architected, a beautiful application. However, COVID happened. And COVID, of course, wrecked the live ticketing industry, including, our reference application. And that's fine. We still have everything that we built, and maybe one day we'll be able to do it again. But we needed a reference application. Now, that's sort of like where y.at came about, because when we started building Tari Aurora, which is the testnet wallet and will eventually become the mainnet wallet as well, the mobile wallet, we were quite frustrated with the experience in using cryptocurrencies from an end user perspective, because you've always got these long, complex addresses. They're very frustrating. They're not very human legible or human readable. They're not very friendly. So I came up with the idea of using emojis for addresses, and that's what we have in Tari Aurora. You can download the testnet wallet today, and you get a 33 emoji long string of emojis as your Tari address, your Tari testnet address. And what we observed is that, I mean, we wanted to make it shorter than 33 emojis, but like that was challenging. But we knew that like if we could make it shorter, it would be cool. And we found people were downloading Tari Aurora, installing it, going, "Wow, this is so cool," and then going, "Oh no, man, there's no guitar in my Tari address," and they would delete the app and reinstall it and to get another address. It was like crazy to see. And that was really what drove us to go, we need to make a shorter version of this. We need to make an alias system around this, like a DNS system around this. And that's basically what y.at is. It's a you can think of it as an emoji username between 1 and 5 characters that you can have 1, you can have 2, you can have 100, you can have as many as you want. So it can be as ephemeral or as permanent as you want it to be, but it's an identity, and you can build whatever you want around it. You know, you can use it as just a simple web redirect. You can build a y.at page, which at the moment is still relatively simple, and it's kind of a little bit like a link tree. You will be able to use it obviously as your wallet address. So you'll be able to use it as a Bitcoin address, or or you'll be able to attach multiple things. So you can use it as your Bitcoin and Monero and Ethereum and whatever else address, and you'll be able to receive funds on it. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we're building out that will really make it far more useful than just a domain, or than just a username, or than just a cryptocurrency address.
Which is actually, I totally get it. And I mean, just at the simplest, I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of complexity here, but just at the simplest form, it's, for those that have not used cryptocurrency yet, the addresses are ridiculous. They're ludicrous. They're just these strings of characters that I don't think anyone in the history of Bitcoin or crypto has remembered what their address is. I mean, maybe I'm wrong because there's some pretty smart people, but, if I give you my Bitcoin address, there's no ways I know what that is. I might know the first 3 and the last 3 characters, but if I could just be, and just tell me if I've got this right, if I could be like, I don't know, horse, guitar, eagle, I'm going to remember that. So just go, hey, here's my horse, guitar, eagle emoji, and that resolves to my Bitcoin address. It suddenly increases the user experience. And I think we'll probably get to this later in the podcast. But in my opinion, and I think you and I touched on this, I think we agree on this, probably the biggest problem in this space is a shit user experience on almost every single thing that you do. And I think what you guys are doing here is potentially pretty great in terms of just improving that user experience by 20%. Which is super, super cool. Just a question. Maybe it's a bit of a silly question, but if I choose, I don't know. I'm trying to think of my favorite emoji. I don't know what it is. It's probably the dude who's doing this. Like, I don't know. So if that was my emoji, like, and I wanted that to be my address, surely there's only one of those. So
Correct.
It's got to be unique. So how do you deal with that? Are you going to charge for like single emoji addresses because that's super rare? Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah, you've totally hit the nail on the head. So at the moment, we're not really selling 1 and 2 emoji y.ats. So the ones that we are selling are 3 to 5 emojis long. And there's this beautiful interface that you can use to pick your emoji. Of course, a lot of the very simple, what I consider to be the simplistic ones, are already taken. Like I love, and pretty much any combination of the emojis we support, I heart, like those are gone. 2 hearts and then like an emoji in the middle, those are gone. Like people obviously like went for the very simple ones really early on because they're simple, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like getting a 3-digit or 2-digit vanity license plate. Like, of course, most of them are going to be long, just like taken rather. Just like single character and 2 character domain names are taken almost across the board. So that said, what we're starting to see now is like more creativity. So, I was there was someone on Instagram today who was really struggling because she wanted Frog, Rocket, and the Paw Prince. And she was like, well, like she likes that, but it's $190 or $140. Well, I can't remember however much it is. And she's not going to pay that. And so we were like, okay, what if you did Frog and then the plus sign and then Rocket and then the plus sign and then the Paw Prince? And that's like $5 or $4, Or what if you did I Heart and then Frog, Rocket, Paw Prince? And that's like $16. So, like there's much cheaper options if you get creative. You don't have to spend a fortune. But of course, like it's, there's a scale depending on we've got this thing called the rhythm score, and the higher the rhythm score, the more expensive it is. And the rhythm score is based on a bunch of things like the emojis you're using, repetition, whether it's whether there's a pattern like it's bookended, and also other things like how short it is, as far as y.ats go. So there's definitely an element to it. Like if you want to flex, you can flex, but if you just want like something temporary that you want to use for the next couple of weeks, you can pay $4 and get a very useful y.at for you.
I can't help myself asking this question. You're probably going to get annoyed with it though. But like, just given this crazy NFT world at the moment where people are paying ludicrous amounts of money for anything unique, do you foresee a marketplace emerging here of like me going and spending the $190 on love, heart, something heart, and spending, or whatever, heart, something heart, and spending $10,000 to buy it from someone? Do you foresee that becoming worth $100,000 because of its scarcity, or is that just not even something that's being factored in here?
I mean, I think look, there are always going to be people who speculate, and I don't think it's a coincidence that all the I heart ones have been snapped up. Yes, there's some people who are doing it for their own personal use. They're like, I heart ice cream. Oh no, I love ice cream. I'm a big ice cream fan. That's the one I'm going to use. And then there are other people who are like, I heart church. I'm never going to use that, but maybe a church will come along and buy it from me, and I'm not going to, we don't judge. Like people have the freedom to use y.ats in whatever way they see fit. There is a secondary market already. There's on the Discord, there's a secondary market channel that's, it's doing traffic. There's a lot of OTC trades going on, but I think what's different about y.ats from NFTs is how many NFTs do you know that have real world utility? I don't mean like NFTs that have a utility in a game. I mean an NFT that you're actually going to use on a daily basis. Like there's none that I can think of. Like even if you spent $69 million on the Beeple NFT, his 5,000 days thing, like what utility are you getting out of that? You're displaying it somewhere. And I think that is a key differentiator. Whether that means that y.ats become valuable or not, I don't know, and it's not really something that factors into my head. What we are trying to do is build something that is useful, usable, and beautiful, and that's really where our focus lies.
And I must say the UI of the site is very cool. It is beautiful. The video you guys have put together, it's I was sitting watching it last night, and I was like, this is done in a way that's unexpected. The way you describe this, you kind of think, what? Emojis for identity? What the hell? And then you go to the website, you're like, wow, this is really beautiful. The video you've created and your partner's narrating, it's actually really beautiful. It is done with a lot of design in mind. I can see that. Super interesting. I must go and get cracking on that. So just forgive me for this question because it's probably, it's a technical shortfall in my understanding, but... and maybe it's a yes or no answer, but y.ats are unique, but they're resolving to an address. So these are not, there is no NFT quality to this. You were just comparing NFTs because of the tradability of something unique, but these are not NFTs in any way. There's no token here, right? It's resolving to an address, or are these tokenized in the background?
So great question. At the moment, y.ats are centralized. So, they're incomparable to NFTs in their current form, but we've built out the plumbing such that they will exist on Tari. So going back to what I said about it being a reference application. So Tari at the moment is testnet only. When Tari launches, then everything is built out for y.ats to move across that they are issued on Tari. So yes, that's the sort of principle that we've used, and that's how we built it out. When they are on Tari, can we call them NFTs? I mean, they're non-fungible. I don't know if we would say that they're tokens per se. I would probably say non-fungible identities, maybe. Just purely because, again, you can craft all sorts of things around a single y.at. They don't really resemble NFTs in that sense. An NFT typically has a limited set of properties. Whereas with this, it might only support, URL redirect and y.at pages and cryptocurrency addresses. in the short term, but in the longer term, there's all sorts of things that could support. I mean, imagine if your y.at could also point to a physical location on Earth, and you can punch it into your GPS and navigate to a restaurant or to someone's house by putting in their y.at.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty cool. And, there's all sorts of things around privacy and location services that, need to be designed and thought out about that. But you can't, adding functionality to an NFT becomes very challenging when it's got a limited set of properties.
Yeah. It's just on that last use case, just to have a bit of fun and bash this around a bit. There's a startup. In fact, I think they're probably more a scale up now, called What Three Words. So, I mean, you guys could have you guys could have a lot of fun with this, right? You could go like, well, what three emojis? Yeah. So, which is a bit more fun.
Yeah.
That's super fun, Rick, and that's really great. Cool. So just shifting gears a bit, I sort of brashly touched on the fact that you've amassed a decent sort of net asset value, and it's pretty common knowledge, I think, in the crypto world at least, that you've done financially well. And the reason why I'm bringing that up again is not to pry into that. It's about, I can imagine you get asked to invest in projects kind of every other day. I can imagine, because you're a public figure, that people are just saying, hey man, I've got this next token, it's going to be amazing, or this mining initiative, or God knows what else. I mean, it must be quite amusing seeing what you get asked to put money into. But you do put money into things. And what I want to ask is, how do you decide how to allocate your capital at the moment? And I think possibly even more importantly, how to allocate your time. So can you talk to us about, like, you have a lot of opportunity to invest time and money into. How do you go about making those decisions, what you actually do follow and what you don't follow?
Yeah, I mean, typically, like, let's talk about time. I mean, my time is extremely curtailed at the moment. I tend to not be able to spend time on anything. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, I'm focused on y.at and on Tari. Like, I am non-operational with Globee and my Monero, but I'm still like part of the structure that steers that on a board level. So, between those things, and then of course I'm still involved in the Monero community. So between all of those things, like, really, I just lack time. I also do a bunch of nonprofit work as well. So, really, like, there's no space in my day to be an advisor to anyone's pet project. And it's I did the advisor thing in the past a couple of times. Didn't really work out. One of the things that frustrated me was, I remember saying to this project, like, okay, cool, I like what you're doing, it's very interesting, I'm happy to be an advisor. You don't even, like, don't give me tokens or whatever, but, like, if you find my advice useful, then you can make me whole down the line. But really, ask me questions. If you're going to put my face on the website, you're going to have to ask me questions. Don't put my face on the website and just pay me for my time to advise you, and that's fine too. And they were like, no, cool. So they put my face on the website, and they didn't ask me a single question. And after, like, I think it was like 8 weeks or whatever, I said to them, like, take it off. I'm not an advisor. Whatever I advised you on.
Yeah.
You barreled ahead and and done a bunch of things that I did mention on the only call we ever had that you shouldn't do it. And so
now you're associated with it, which is not what you want.
Exactly. So time is, of course, very critical. I would love to be able to advise more projects. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
Capital as well. Like, I'm not very, like, risk averse. Like, I'm quite happy to, like, take ginormous risks with small amounts of capital. But typically, with deal flow, like, it tends to have to come via someone else that I know and trust. I again, like, just lack the time to really sit and evaluate things. And yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm writing small checks. It's just like it's mostly into startups. Not a big fan of like, ICOs and that. Did that a lot in 2017, got burnt. Certainly, made money on some of them, but, like, got burnt on a sufficient number of them that I realized the misalignment of incentives that ICOs often cause. And so, yeah, I mean, now it's just like, if there's deal flow that comes across my desk because of someone that I know and trust, and I'm close to a lot of people in the space, where it's not really public knowledge, where we don't go and tweet at each other the whole time or whatever. Some of them I don't even follow on Twitter, but we're like, talking on Telegram all the time, or talking on whatever, on Signal, or Wire. And like, it's kind of funny because, like, deal flow sometimes comes across my desk in very, very weird ways. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that there are a lot of people that are trying to do cool stuff. And, typical, like, early stage startup investments, I'm looking at like 7 to 9 years as a typical liquidity horizon. And I'm expecting 90% of them to fail.
Yeah.
And
so kind of VC type model.
Yeah. As long as I go into it with those expectations, then I'm never going to be disappointed.
Yeah. Love it, and appreciate the honesty and the insight. So I want to change topics a little bit. So anyone listening can hear my accent, can hear Rick's accent. We're both from South Africa, but not currently in South Africa. And at Nona, we've got a bit of a sort of side mission. We don't talk about this too much. We just try to do rather than talk. But because you're here, I want to talk. And what I'm talking about here is, we think we have very, very good engineering talent in South Africa. Our business, we work with Tezos and Algorand and co-founder of Ethereum and all kinds of other projects. And we believe we are as good, if not better, than anyone else in the world. And I'm not talking about Nona. I mean, I am talking about Nona, but I'm talking about the fact that Nona is driven by South African talent. And, a lot of people don't realize this, and a lot of people probably don't even agree with that. But you're also South African, and I want to get your take on what is your view and opinion on the talent in South Africa as compared to the rest of the world? I mean, you very much play on a global stage. You're not considered, Fluffy Pony, the South African. You're considered Fluffy Pony, the crypto gangster. So, which is a global thing, right? So, and I say that with the most amount of praise, by the way. So talk to me about what your view is of like the talent in South Africa. Do you think it's great? Do you rate it? Do you think we've got a long way to go? What's your view of it?
You're making me feel like a Joe Burger now. Yeah, but you talk to me about the talent, eh?
Because you are, but
the thing is, South Africa has a special energy. In South Africa, there are. I mean, it's certainly not the most poverty-stricken country. It's like it tries to be first world, but in many ways, it's third world. But because of a severe case of dysfunction, some of which is inherited and some of which is self-created, you are forced to be very, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, you have to be self-sustaining, and you need to just, like, no one's going to do it for you. There are no handouts. And that is almost across the board. Like, there might have been a time when there were handouts, but, like, there are no handouts today. It is regularly, like, I was chatting to one of the ladies that works for us. We had our daily sync today, and she was like, I haven't had water for 3 days. Like, there's an issue with the water pipes in the area. They're trying to fix it, but for 3 days we have not had water. I've had to go to my in-laws to shower. We had water coming on for like 40 minutes. We had to fill up the bath. We had to make a plan. And that phrase, make a plan, is so South African, because when the police force disappoints you and doesn't work, you make a plan. When Eskom fails and you don't have power, you make a plan. When Joburg Water isn't able to deliver water to your area, you make a plan. It doesn't matter what happens, you make a plan. And that attitude that resilience is what causes South Africans to become such good engineers. Because, and amongst other things, we have amazing design talent as well. But just on an engineering level, it's like they don't bat an eyelid. Situations that would cause other engineers to lose their mind, they've faced on an ongoing basis growing up. And they've learned to make a plan. And so, when there's time constraints, they make a plan. And when, the data center's down and you don't have backups, you make a plan. And I think it has led to some incredible engineering talent. Also, one other thing I'd like to add is the standard of education, of public education, is not great, but it's passable. And a lot of the engineers and others who have worked for me in South Africa in the past, some of them have come up in the public education system, and some of them have gone to the private education system. But when it comes to like university level education, those that have gone to university, you cannot really fault the quality of education at university level in South Africa, public or private.
Yeah.
It's really not bad at all. I would not say it's like, I'm certainly not going to say it's Ivy League, but it is pretty rock solid. So now you combine this incredible, robust, make a plan attitude with pretty decent education, even if they've only gone to like college and not gone to university. And you end up with a really, really just excellent group of hires. And one other thing that I'm just going to keep on adding other things into this conversation. But one other thing that is also very true is historically, the organizations that have paid, especially on the software side, that have paid the best salaries have been the banks. And it's not like in America where there's a scattershot group of banks. There's like 4 big banks and then one other, biggish one called Capitec. And you work for the big banks, or maybe you work for like the one of the 2 big cellular providers. That's kind of it. If you want to go, you want a good salary, like that's where you go as a software engineer or DevOps or whatever. But it is so staid and corporate and boring. It is beyond boring. I've worked with ABSA, I've worked at Standard Bank, I've worked at Nedbank, been deployed there, hated every minute of them all. It's not enjoyable. Worked with Vodacom as well, and the people are amazing, but like it's just the work is not challenging and it's very frustrating. And so what we're finding now is, because we can suddenly compete, thank you COVID, on an international level, because we no longer need to physically be in the same office as people, well, now we can afford to pay salaries that are not even comparable to the banks. They're more than the banks. And because you're working from home, you get a whole bunch of benefits like not needing to sit in traffic for an hour and, being able to not wear pants and, all sorts of other benefits like that. And so we're starting to see we're definitely starting to see a drain of talent out of banks and into remote work opportunities. Also, because it gives them an opportunity, if they ever want to move out of the city or to move out of the country or to do whatever they want while still working for the same company.
Yeah, I think, Rick, I just can't fault anything you've said, and you said it really so succinctly. It's that combination of resilience and, I guess, quite a deep pool of intelligence. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in South Africa that makes for incredible engineers. And what you're talking about, the whole landscape is absolutely true. It still needs to be understood that it's still an incredibly competitive environment. We've seen quite a few US and European startups now come and put a foothold in South Africa, thinking they can just gobble up all the talent, and getting here and going, Jesus, okay, it exists, but it's incredibly competitive still. And I mean, at the beginning, and I'll do it again at the end of the podcast, we're hiring, and we've never found it as difficult to hire strong talent at the moment. It exists, but it's very difficult to get. And you've got to have a very compelling offer as a company now, right? It's like, we have some clients who sort of go, oh, it's easy, Mike, don't worry, we'll just build a team of 15 engineers and then we'll, okay, cool. But this is not like hiring accountants and administrators. Like, you've got to sell your business to the engineer as much as vice versa. On that, Rick, and this is always a important question for me, because this is our business, and there's no I know you will answer this honestly, but even if it's completely opposite to what you think I want to hear, I still want the answer. So you've built a lot of tech. You are a developer, a very competent and respected developer. Talk to me about when it makes sense to insource your tech completely and when it makes sense to work with an outsourced tech partner. What is your view of that in general?
Yeah, I think it depends on some, like I'm very security focused. And obviously, having worked on software that is related to security, and worked in environment in very adversarial environments like with Bitcoin and with Monero, there is a definite need to insource if your goal is security. But I think a lot of companies misunderstand their threat model. They think like, oh man, we got to build our own mobile app because like that's the first line of defense. Meanwhile, what you actually want is an agency for that. You want the agency to build the mobile app, and you want to secure the actual frontier, which is like the set of APIs that app is going to hit. Securing, like, no hacker worth their salt is going to go like, I will, try and enter a 73-digit long password or do SQL injection into the app. They're just going to monitor the traffic and like fire up Wireshark, they're going to like just like run an MITM proxy, and they're going to see like the traffic that's flowing between the app and the server, and then they're just going to run their own little thing in the middle and pretend to be the app. So the app is useless. It's just a pretty face. It's lipstick on a pig. Get an agency to do that. Get an agency to build anything that's customer facing, anything that is, and I mean, that's not to say you can't get an agency to like build, server-side components. But if your threat model is we're protecting data, then you need to seriously think about insourcing. If your threat model is like we're an e-commerce store and someone might place a fraudulent order, why are you trying to like hire developers and do that yourself? Like your job is to sell products. Your job is not to build software. So, I think threat model and like making your blows count are the two things that I really encourage people to do.
Yeah, makes sense. And again, original answer. I asked that question to almost every guest that has built projects, and I've never heard that answer. I mean, I'm not surprised you come at it from a security perspective, given your history, but it's a very nice, succinct, again, a way to explain it. So, Rick, I want to move to some more sort of rapid fire style questions because I am conscious of time. So you do a lot of shit. You're busy with a lot of things. You travel a lot. I think you have 6 dogs, from what I know, which is I found
dogs.
5 dogs. I found the most random picture on the internet where all your dogs were sitting at a table at like a Christmas party. It was just hilarious. I was like, this is so great. Anyway, like literally on the chairs, like no humans, just dogs. It was so great.
Yeah.
So you're a busy dude, like, and I'm guessing like your context switching mentally is quite tough. So the question here is, do you have any habits or routines that you rely on for more focus and not peak performance? Because I don't actually believe in the concept of peak performance, but optimal performance. Like, how do you maintain your mental focus and robustness?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so my habit is wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 20 minutes, make myself a smoothie. No, I'm kidding. I don't do any of that. I hate it when people do that. It's such garbage.
I love that shit.
I wake up at 7. Like, that's the earliest I'm getting out of bed unless I've really got to wake up early. Like, I'm not waking up at 5 to go for a run around the block and meditate. Come on, guys. Let's be real. I think, yeah, the thing that helps is context switching is a killer. And it's probably taken me 10 years to learn that properly. But I block out times in my calendar for work, and I can't do less than 3 hours. I simply cannot do a 30-minute like I'm going to work.
It takes you 30 minutes to get into it. Yeah, exactly.
So I block out 3 hours, and that is like it's untouchable. And and my wife is really supportive in that. Like I bought a little, so I got this little LED lamp. It's like just cheap Chinese stuff. It's got like a little remote and it's got a battery in it. It's like up on the wall. And I just take a little remote, and when I hit the button, the light goes red. And then she knows, like, I'm head down, I'm working.
That is amazing. I love that so much.
When the light is off, she can come in and interrupt my workflow anytime because I'm faffing around on Twitter or replying to emails. And it's not, if I get interrupted replying to an email, I might be annoyed for a fraction of a second, but I can get back to the email. I'll live. Or I'm like fighting with someone on Reddit, the light can be off for that. But when I've got a grind, when I'm doing stuff and I've really got to like stay focused, then that light's on. Then she knows, like, come hell or high water, unless the house is on fire, please don't come in. And just like that, and like blocking out distractions, like really use do not disturb. on your phone, on your computer. Really like block it out properly. Best way to do it.
Yeah, I love that, and it's you make it sound simple, and I think for the listeners that don't do this, it's simple, but it's really difficult to do that. I'm super ADD, so for me to do that is really difficult. But whenever I can do it, it's incredibly valuable, and it's one of those things where you say, yeah, just block out 3-hour chunks. Try to actually do that and see how much you need a remote-controlled Chinese lamp to tell your wife to leave you alone. Next question: What scares you in business?
What scares me in business? Doing something and then finding out it was all irrelevant. I mean, I want stuff that I build to be meaningful, and that doesn't mean it needs to be the best, the most widely used, the one that everyone loves. I just want to know that something that I've built has actual users, and even if it's only 100 people, that they love it, and that we've built something that has benefited them. Like if this is the pie that we're going after, I don't mind taking the slither, but then I need that slither. I would be so frustrated if I try to get the whole pie and I failed, and then I'm just left with desolation.
Yeah, I love that. What content are you consuming currently?
Netflix and chill. No, yeah, I'm not a big podcaster. Like I do watch stuff on YouTube. Yeah, so I can tell you, like, when it comes to YouTube, I'm pretty like tech focused. There's a specific set of things that I enjoy keeping up to date with, or keeping up to date on, and it's pretty sort of across the board stuff like MKBHD. I love the stuff that he covers. Mr. Who's the Boss, who's this British guy that mostly covers mobile tech. He's fantastic. Snazzy Labs, who covers primarily Apple stuff. Like, I find him fascinating. CGP Grey always has great stuff. I've been watching a lot of Legal Eagle. Just sort of like, again, like I don't have time to watch everything, but like when like Legal Eagle and Lockpicking Lawyer, just some of their stuff. Like when Legal Eagle is covering like some First Amendment thing, and it's like really interesting, or some really interesting legal case. I'm not a lawyer, but I find it fascinating. Same with like Lockpicking Lawyer. I've got an interest in lockpicking, and I don't have to watch every single bike lock that he picks. But man, when he picks something like unusual or interesting, I'm there. I'm like, yeah,
it's so fascinating. Every successful entrepreneur that I interview ever, like curiosity is one of the things that they have as an attribute. It's absolutely standard. I'm beginning to think you can't be successful unless you have an innate curiosity. They just go hand in hand. Rick, what's the last book you read cover to cover?
Sure. Yeah, now I'm gonna, the Da Vinci Code? No, jest. So yeah, I'm actually like, COVID. I thought COVID was going to be like fantastic because I was going to like read just tons of books, and of course that didn't happen. Like last year was kind of a mess. I think last book that I read was a James A. Corey book, Tiamat's Wrath, I think. Yeah, that was probably the last one I read, and that
I'll
was
check it out.
That was 2019. James
Cool.
A. Corey is great, fantastic. Like, I mean, if you're into sci-fi, then he's great.
It's great. What is something that you're doing in the next 7 days to improve yourself or your craft?
Wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 20 minutes. No, I think one thing that I've noticed is the last few months in particular, I've found to be particularly stressful. Like it's felt that COVID has just been dragging on and it's not going away. And that coupled with like the stress of like getting y.at to the point where we could launch it in alpha, and then just like a bunch of other stuff in my life, has led to me being like very stressed, not able to gym, bad eating habits, picked up a bunch of weight. So like that's pretty, like I've kicked back in now probably from about a week ago. back on a solid eating back to solid eating habits where I'm not like, being an idiot, and going to start gymming again. So excited about that.
So you're going to start waking up at 5 a.m., meditate for 20 minutes, have a smoothie,
That's
run
it.
around the block.
Go for the run. Go for the run around the block, man. Got to do it.
Rick, it's been great. We've spoken about a lot. We've jumped around, which is great. I love it when we do that. Of everything we've spoken about, what is the one thing that you would want listeners to take away from today?
Wake up at 5 a.m. meditate for 20 minutes. The one thing that I wish I knew more, or I wish I knew a decade ago, was that it's okay to fail. Just be honest about it. Don't pretend that you're more successful than you are. If you mess up, mea culpa. People will respect you more for that than like you doubling down on a lie or on a mistruth, or like when you messed up.
Yeah, love that. So Rick, you're prolific on Twitter. Everyone, Fluffy Pony, just Google it, you'll find him. But do you like to be contacted or followed in any other way? Or is that your chosen?
Twitter's pretty much where it's at, unless you want to pitch up at my house at 5 a.m. and meditate for 20 minutes
and
go for a run around the block, make a smoothie.
I got to say, you're the only person I've ever interviewed that's not on LinkedIn, and I kind of find that quite rad.
Hate LinkedIn.
I kind of think that's cool.
Die in a fire.
Like, I love LinkedIn, so we can fight about that while we're meditating silently. Yeah. But Rick, it's been super cool. You've been absolutely awesome. I know your time is super valuable, so I really appreciate you making the time for the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
So to the listeners, I hope and I know you got some value today from Riccardo Spagni. I sure did. I think you all know what it's going to be. It's wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 20 minutes, make a smoothie, go for a run. But in all seriousness, thanks very much for listening to the How to Be Moderately Successful podcast. If you've got a fintech project that you want to accelerate with a partner that'll take care of your design and development to allow you to focus on your area of genius, we'd love to help you. Head over to our website, www.nona.digital, to book a call with one of our principals, or just follow any of the contacts in the show notes. And one last plug, we are actively hiring many senior developer roles and technical leads, and we're offering a very tasty reward for any successful referrals. And I'll be back next week with another episode to help you build better businesses, better fintech products, and a better you.